him was an infinitely more welcoming sight. His own generation of the League of Second Sons had caroused their way through London, their band growing larger and more raucous as they went. They'd stormed Lady Harlem's ball, invaded the Duke of Devonshire's route, and been ejected from the coffee house. The League had made their own by the elder members who'd retired there for a quiet night. Ultimately, they had finished that evening here in Vaughan's drawing room, or at least he had. No one else appeared to have laid claim to the other settee or the floor. Roland had a vague memory of Thane flirting with Lady Ligonier in the bow window just before his memory went black. Perhaps Thane had been lucky enough to accompany the lady home. Lucky devil if he had. For the life of him, Roland couldn't remember anyone taking their leave, but he must have been in quite a state if they couldn't even get him up the stairs and into one of the guest chambers. Roland ran his hands down his chest, yanking them away as a pin dug painfully into his flesh. He glanced down. A thin brass dress pin, the kind used to hold a lady's gown closed, secured a slip of paper to his coat. Roland tore it free, sending the pin flying. His own drunken handwriting crawled across the paper. I, Roland Devere, bet Lord Leonidas Vaughan 1 guinea I can beat Anthony Thane into the bed of Lady Olivia Carlow. All 3 of their signatures were scrawled below the statement, Thane's with an artful flourish that bespoke amusement and sobriety. Roland crumpled the note in his fist. How many witnesses had there been? Who'd been left by the time they'd degenerated into boasts and bets? Good Lord. Lady Olivia was, in some convoluted way, very near a relative of Vaughan's, as his sister was married to Lady Olivia's first husband's brother. What the hell had they been thinking? A heart-shaped face, brilliant blue eyes under straight pale brows, a jumble of blonde curls, Lady Olivia shimmered insubstantially before his eyes. She had been hotly pursued during her time on the marriage mart. An heiress and a beauty. She'd married well. Or so it seemed at the time. Lady Olivia had been through a lot in the last year. He ought to know, having borne witness to all the most humiliating details of the scandal that had ended her marriage. She didn't need the gentlemen of the ton making sport of her. But it was inevitable that she would be pursued like a vixen by a pack of hounds now that she'd returned to town. Guilt at being one of those self-same hounds surged before dissipating amid the rush of undeniable anticipation. Lady Olivia Carlow wasn't quite a widow, nor was she ruined in the traditional sense of the word. Her situation was, in a word, unique. Numbness spread through Livy's hands as she read the letter that had arrived on the silver salver with the Morning Post. The tingling spread up her arms and coalesced into a blinding ball of fury inside her chest. She stared dumbly at the words, raking her eyes over the sentences that sloped haphazardly across the page and ended in a nearly illegible scrawl of a signature. She'd known returning to town was a mistake, had known it bone deep. But just when she'd convinced her father that it was a terrible idea for her to accompany him back after the Easter recess her grandmother had started in, siding with the Earl, against her, for the first time since her marriage had ended. Her marriage. Livy's stomach churned, and she tasted bile at the back of her throat. Her marriage had been the great scandal of the ton the previous year, eclipsing even the runaway marriage of her former brother-in-law. Bigamy wasn't a word an earl's daughter was ever supposed to become familiar with, let alone something she was supposed to experience. It was still nearly impossible to grasp that the man she'd married, the man she and her father had chosen so carefully from the legions of suitors, had already had a wife, some Scottish cutler's daughter, who was, even now, happily remarried and living in Canada. The crinkle of paper brought her head up from the insulting letter and pulled her out of the spiral of reminiscence. Her father was staring at her over the sagging upper edge of the Morning Post. Livy forced herself to pick up her teacup and take a drink. The tea was stone cold, and the sugar lay thick in the bottom, only half dissolved. But it served to settle her roiling stomach all the same. "Bad news?" the Earl asked,